Hey guys, remember Supergirl, Season 2, Episodes 17 through 19, and yes guys, I am still reviewing this show. I did not just randomly forget about the show. Basically, what happened was I was going to review the show way back before it went on hiatus, but I just didn't get a chance to, and then with my Virginia trip and everything, I just fell flat in terms of Supergirl, and, main reason is because of the first episode we have to talk about here, which I'll get into, but as I usually do these videos, talk about everything that went down in these 3 episodes, giving my thoughts on where I think the show's going to go from here. But like I said, the main reason that I kind of fell through fell off Supergirl for a little bit is because of the first episode here, Distant Sun, which for me is the weakest episode of this entire season. As you guys know, the last episode, Star-Crossed, I was not very high on. I thought there was a lot of expository dialogue. I did not think the story was nearly as interesting as I could have made it. And Rhea and Largand, I just didn't care about as much as the show wanted me to. This episode, however, makes us care about them even less than we actually did, because this episode just kind of felt like it was there for plot's sake. It wasn't there for the sake of story. It was there for the sake of the plot. That's the only reason why this was really here. Because basically this episode, even though Mon-El has refused to take over and, join Rhea and Largand and partake in their sort of duties or whatever and go back to their home planet, they still try to get him back, and they place, this bounty on him. Mon-El's possessed for, the first few minutes of this episode. There's some nice scenes between him and Car, because as we know, the relationship is in a good place now. He's actually making breakfast for her. I thought that was fine, but most of this episode is, like I said, Rhea and Largand trying to get Mon-El back to their home planet, basically forcing him to go back with them, even if he doesn't want to, and in general, it just really is not that interesting. They actually end up holding him captive. You don't know where Mon-El's really going to go, if he's actually going to end up going with them, because it seems that it just isn't really going to work with the way this is all going. Largand and Rhea, in general, are really not that interesting of characters, especially Largand. They really didn't give him anything that interesting to do, and there is a lot of exposition in this scene, in this episode, there's where Rhea is talking about how Mon-El was a child. He'd hang on to her leg when she tried to leave the room. It broke her heart. Now she'd rather die than leave Earth without Mon-El, and no part of this episode does it feel like these are his parents. It feels like these are, distant cousins who haven't seen him in a long time. They don't really feel like they're his parents. They're not really concerned in their son's emotional resonance. They're more concerned in just doing what they can, using him physically. She doesn't really care about him emotionally. She cares about him physically. And if there's one thing this episode confirms, it confirms that Rhea is basically just as evil as she let on. And let me just say, Terry Hatcher does a great job in these 3 episodes. But Rhea is about as cliche as a villain as you could possibly get. She's one of those cat-stroking, mustache-twirling type of villains that is really just there, for taking over the world and things like that. And definitely that she's kind of just there with an evil intent. And Mon-El is not going to end up joining his parents. And I'm glad that he didn't, in the end, end up joining them. I thought that was definitely well done that he didn't do that. And we actually end the episode with Rhea and Largand talking. I'm glad that he did, like I said, stay with Car. But we end with Lar and Rhea talking about how Mon-El made their decision. Lar's talking about how Mon-El would have never been happy with them. And Rhea reminds them that they used to be in sync with each other. And she talks about how they made a commitment to their family, and then says that Lar ruined that, and she feels like he's the reason for a lot of a lot of the problems with their family. It's all kind of ties back to Lar. And Rhea decides that she doesn't think they're going to move on. She doesn't think they're going to get better from this, so she just kills him. Yeah, she stabs Lar, and she promises she's not done with Earth, and Rhea is going to be our villain for the rest of the season. And it feels very abrupt because we have gotten introduced to this character so late in the season. But I'm glad that we finally have established a villain, because from here, I didn't really know where the show was going to go. Luckily, these last 2 episodes, they seem to show where we're headed from here, which I'm glad to see. But I really wanted Lily and Luther to kind of be the villain. I was hoping she would be our villain for the rest of the season. It seems like that's what they want to do. But Rhea is going to be our villain for the last half of this season, and this episode in general, I just really wasn't a fan of. And it wasn't just the main plot. The subplot of this episode is one of the weirdest, most out there subplots we have seen in this entire show. It might be the weirdest, because it involves Maggie and Alex's relationship, and usually this is a recipe for success, right? It seems like things always seem to go well for these two. They're one of the most beloved relationships of the show. But this episode, I don't know where they were really going. Maggie meets Emily. Emily is actually her ex-girlfriend, and Alex is very curious about the relationship. And not just curious, she's pretty obsessed, actually. And this goes kind of into very stalkerish territory, where Alex is literally following Maggie and Emily. They have this conversation at dinner. She follows them there. She follows Emily back to her hotel. I mean, she doesn't really seem to be giving her any space whatsoever, and Maggie does apologize. You know, basically Alex wants Maggie to apologize to Emily and work things out, but it's just not your job to really do that. I don't know why Alex felt like she had to be the peacemaker here. Like, you're not really the one to have to do that. If I was Alex, I just wouldn't really get involved with that shit, because why should I care about my, significant other's exes? I mean, sure, I think she should care how they feel, but why do you care so much about their ex? Like, you're with this person, why do you want to be involved with their ex? I just didn't really understand that. It was just a very strange plot overall. I think it really could have redeemed a lot of this episode, but because the subplot was just this weird, this ended up being, like I said, I think the worst episode of this entire season. I really was not a fan of how the rest of this episode played out, and in general, it did definitely make me a little bit worried for where the show is going to go for the rest of the season. Now, luckily, I'm happy to say that the other two episodes I'm going to talk about here are definitely a lot better. Not just marginally, but in every way. I really enjoyed these other two episodes here. Let's first talk about the next episode, which is Ace Reporter. I really enjoy this episode because, as we know, recently, the actress who plays Lima, I can't think of her name right now, but she's been recently promoted to a series regular. And by doing that, I think it was definitely a wise decision because so many people love her and Kara's friendship. I definitely do as well. But this was definitely the right episode to do because they actually do give us a Lena-centric episode where we focus on, one, Kara and Lena's relationship, but also we're focusing mainly on this guy, Jack, that Lena was romantically involved with for 2 years, and basically they go to this press conference, and it's for this new program called Biomax, and Kara accidentally bumps into Snapper. She didn't know that he was going to be there, but he is in fact there, and, she says she's just there with her friend, and obviously things are kind of awkward between Kara and Snapper, and, you see Jack, he comes out, and he's talking about how his company's going to propel them into the future, which Jack is actually played by the dude who plays Ravi on iZombie, and I love that actor. He's just so charismatic, so fun to watch, and he did a really good job here. It was kind of sad what ends up happening to him, but we'll get into that. And basically, he talks about how there's this thing called Biomax, and it's this thing that they're, basically it's this group of nanites which heal his wound, and they're going to release them throughout the city, all these, like, medical miracles, and things at first seem good. Obviously, things are kind of awkward between Jack and Lena because obviously he now has a girl, Beth, and basically Beth says that Jack should spend more time with the shareholders and things like that because Lena really wants to know how Jack finally cracked his code. They worked together for so long. He's saying, oh, look, I'll tell you at dinner. Don't worry about it. But Kara is kind of suspicious. She definitely knows that something is going on, and basically, Kara ends up visiting James at Kako and asks him to fill this request, and Snapper is kind of surprised to see her there, but James, basically tells him, which I like they finally showed James. It seems like it's been so many episodes without him, but James actually says that, she's welcome there at any time. You can tell that Snapper kind of regrets firing her, but we quickly realize that Jack is definitely is definitely a little bit more shady than he seemed, and that Kara's reactions to him were definitely apt because he actually sneaks into Lena's office past security. He invites her to dinner again. She refuses again, and he wonders why she's so mad. And eventually, he admits he doesn't really like how things ended with them, and Lena says she doesn't want to go. She agrees, making sure that it's just dinner, but quickly we realize that Jack is in fact, he conducted human trials and things like that, and the nanoswarm is actually linked to the spherical mainframe, and there are all these kind of questions that they're asking him, and we find out the Biomax is actually very dangerous, and that Jack is actually covering it all up, and the nanoswarm, he's actually using it to kill people. He's not using it to heal them, he's using it to kill them, and she visits Jack in her lab, says he lied to her about Biomax, how she knows that he killed people, and that when they worked in the nanites 3 years ago, they could be used to control people, and he insists he doesn't really know what she's talking about and things like that, but quickly, she does make him pick up the nanite injector and advance on her, and Beth is releasing more nanites. Lena tells Supergirl to keep them occupied. I mean, just everything about this climax, though, is actually very well handled. The nanites actually tear at Supergirl. She prepares to override the code, and luckily, eventually, they do. Lena is able to override the system. The nanites and Jack do collapse, and Jack actually does end up dying, which I felt very bad for him, because again, I really like that actor. He's such a likable guy, but I like that he was a villain here. Like, I like that he actually was bad, and that he was actually a little bit shadier than we thought he was going to be, and they bring flowers in honor of him. Beth actually does go to jail, and Leah talks about how she feels cold and calm, and I just thought in general this was a very strong episode for Lena. I like how Kara says, she's always going to be a friend, she's always going to protect her, and I really do like that friendship. I think it's just a very strong friendship overall. I think it's something different than we've seen in this show, because there really hasn't been another female besides Alex, and by bringing Lena into the fold, especially by making her main character, it gives Kara someone else to talk to that's not Alex, that's a female, and I really do like that here. But we do see at the end of this episode, Snapper actually does give Kara her job back. He realizes how good she is at what she did, and basically he needs more reporters that care about the truth. As we know, she's always been focused on telling the truth, and he actually does want to he actually does give her job back, which I really like seeing. But the most interesting part of this episode is the end, where Lena's actually in her office when Rhea comes in and actually gives her this officer condolence about Jack, but she has a business proposition for Lena, and Lena and Rhea actually do end up teaming up for the next 2 episodes. I thought that was definitely something that was a highlight here. I overall definitely really like what we got here, but there was a subplot in this episode involving Lyra and Wynn, and this was kind of just disposable to me. I didn't really care too much about this whole subplot. I like Wynn and Lyra, I just didn't really care a lot about what was going on here. Basically, it's about as ridiculous as the last subplot we got with Wynn and Lyra, where basically we end up seeing the Guardian, and he ends up fighting and subduing this thug and everything. The police approach, and Wynn, basically, he ends up busting in when Wynn and Lyra are clearly trying to hook up, and basically, he knows, obviously, what's going on with Lyra and the thieves, and he's trying to help them out with that, and just this whole plot, I just don't really care about. I think it's kind of nonsensical. It doesn't really make a lot of sense, honestly, but Lyra does meet Wynn at the bar, gives her a favorite dessert. She realizes he's trying too hard. Wynn tells her she went too hard on the robber, and it does seem like things are going pretty well between these two. Lyra figures that James actually hates her, is upset with Wynn for agreeing for her, orders him to leave while she goes to powder her nose. James is watching from the door. Wynn actually storms off past him, but luckily they do end up apologizing for what happened with Lyra, and tells Wynn that Lyra is his brother, tells Wynn that he's his brother and everything, and Lyra is standing there. Lyra says that James invited her, and I do like that they are working things out, but I'm just not that invested in this plot. I like Lyra and Wynn together, but the whole thing with her being this thief and robbing banks and things like that, I'm just not that invested, and I find it a little bit silly. Overall, though, I definitely did enjoy this episode. This was a really strong episode for Lena, and I definitely was interested in, where we're going to go with Lena from here. However, out of the 3 episodes, by far the strongest has to be this week's episode, Alex. I really did love this episode because it really did change up a lot of the formula that we're used to. We start out the episode, we see Maggie, and she's kind of frustrated with Supergirl because she always ends up having to save the day when Maggie is very close. And I think Maggie did bring up some good arguments here that, police detectives have to work a lot more delicately and they don't cause nearly as much damage as Supergirl does. And a lot of times when, Kara is trying to help people, she ends up causing a lot more damage than she should. And I thought that already was a really good setup. But in this episode, we see later on that Maggie and Kara, they both don't know where Alex is gone. Turns out she's actually been kidnapped by a childhood friend of Kara and Alex's, and I like that Maggie and Kara are forced to team up together. I thought that was overall really well done, the way they set up that kind of like animosity between them, but they had to kind of put aside their differences and actually team up. I thought that was all really well done, and basically the caller is Peter Thompson, and he's serving this life sentence at Albatross Bay Supermax, and he makes it very clear what he wants, that he has this father, and basically he wants them to release his father, Peter. Rick grew up in Midvale. He actually, Rick Malvern, that's his son, and if they don't release Peter, basically, if they don't release him, then Alex is going to die, and we see that they actually did know Rick. He was actually a really nice guy, but they don't really know what happened to him. The whole story between Peter and Rick, I didn't exactly care about, I'm not gonna lie. That's like the main thing that kind of does make this episode is not nearly as good as it could have been, but I did feel a lot of this was very well done. Maggie and Alex are making all these promises to each other, Maggie not knowing if she's gonna see Alex again, and Alex is by herself for a lot of the episode. She has to fend for herself. She's in this like water tower, she has to like cut herself to just make herself known. Just a lot of that stuff with her on surveillance. It honestly was very thrilling. I thought a lot of that was very well done. You knew Alex obviously wasn't going to die, but I just thought all of that was set up very well. And in the end, they actually don't. They do get Peter and Rick they do bring Rick to Peter and everything, which I thought was well done. Because, obviously they need to get Peter out of the Supermax, but Alex is telling Supergirl not to do it. And I like that she told Kara not to do it. Like, she knows Kara is definitely better than that, and basically her being Alex's girlfriend actually trumps Supergirl being Alex's sister. I thought that was definitely just a really well done scene, how Alex tells her, that she needs to speak to her alone, and basically in the end of it all, what ends up happening is they do, like I said, Rick kills Alex and Pierola fails the one good thing that he did, and that's like the one good thing that he did, basically, because it turns out that Rick wants to rescue Peter like Peter rescued him, but if Alex dies, he'll have to live with the guilt of Alex's death for the rest of his life, so he just can't possibly kill Alex. And Peter tells him that there's one place Rick would have taken Alex, and that one place, of course, basically, she goes underwater, and they do in fact confirm that Alex is alive. But again, I just didn't really care about that whole Rick and Peter storyline. I found it to be quite disposable. You knew things were obviously going to go fine for Alex, but I thought overall it definitely was a well done story. I thought it was definitely played out quite well, the way they definitely handled it, and especially the ending where Alex admits to Maggie that she loves her and that she wants to do all those firsts with her. I just thought was really well handled. And the fact that Maggie actually did give Kara credit for being Alex's sister and how that always does put her at a better advantage, I just thought was really well done, the way those two bonded, just everything about that. It made these three grow closer in a way we really didn't expect it to, and I thought that was definitely well done. But the other plot of this episode has to do, of course, with Lina and Rhea, because Rhea is trying to convince Lina to ally with her, and at first she thinks she'll do that with no problem, because in fact she is a Luthor. She thinks she'll be as approachable as Lillian, but as we know, Lina is not nearly as easily on board with that stuff. At first she's not into it at all. Basically because she visits Lina, she works out quickly that Rhea is an alien. She's not going to help Rhea build anything because, obviously what Rhea wants to do, it definitely is for some kind of evil intent, and, Lina very well knows what's going on there, but Rhea does teleport onto Lina's balcony, and she actually lied to her. She claims that she assumed Lina's attitude would be the same as her mother's, but everything else she really said is true. She insists that she just wants to create a transmitter platform. The portal would help her get home to her people, people, but you know there definitely is more to it. In the end, it does seem that she gets Lena on board, but you definitely know there's a lot more of this than you think there's going to be. So I'm definitely interested in seeing where that's going to take us for the rest of the season. Overall, guys, I definitely enjoyed this episode. This was a really strong episode overall. I like what we got here with Maggie, Alex, and Kara. It was a little bit late into the season. Like, in general, I feel like it should have been more of a middle of the season episode than an end of the season, especially where we are now. We don't really need these sort of like one-offs, but I thought overall was definitely a good story, connecting these three together in a way we didn't really expect it to. I thought it was definitely well done, and I think it does very well set up the end point of the season. So overall, guys, some really interesting stuff to think about heading into these final 3 episodes. The main thing to talk about here is Lena and Rhea, because yes, Rhea did get Lena on board with what she's doing, but I don't think Lena is going to be as welcoming as Rhea expects her to be. I think Lena definitely knows that Rhea has much more evil intent. I don't think this is going to go nearly as well as Rhea thinks it is. I don't think it's going to go Rhea's way either. I think Lena is going to make some modifications to this so it doesn't go as well for Rhea. We don't really know what Rhea's plan is at this point. All we know, she said, you know, I'm not done with Earth, and I don't know really where that's all going to go from here, but I am interested in seeing how that all plays out, you know, what Rhea is really going to get out of this, what her whole essential plan is. I really do like Terry Hatcher, I do. I think she does a very good job as this character, but again, there's just not a lot of pathos with her. Like, we don't really care about her as a character. She's just, like I said, kind of that, like, cat-stroking villain who is just there for evil and is just kind of there for the sake of being a villain. So I don't really know where they're going to go with her in the end of all this, but I think overall it is going to be interesting to see where they take her in these final 3 episodes. But I do like that Lena is still a big part of this narrative, because, you know, we've set up Lena throughout the entire season. Is she good? Is she bad? And this is really going to test her limits of, is she really willing to cross that line? Is she really willing to work for Rhea? And how far is she really willing to go? We'll have to see really where that's going to go, because I think that definitely is going to be very interesting. Is Lillian going to get involved? Is Rhea going to end up teaming up with Lillian? If that's where this takes us, I think that's going to be a much more interesting story. If she ends up teaming up with Lillian, I think that's initially what Rhea should have done. I don't really think she needed to get Lena involved. I think I understand why. She knows Lena is definitely the more tech-savvy of the two, but I do think Lillian would have been just as much more actually approachable than Lena would have been, but we'll have to see really where that's going to go. As far as everything going on with Wynn and Lyra, again, this plot is very confusing. I don't really know how I feel about it with her robbing banks and whatnot, but I'm interested in seeing where it's going to go. I don't really know what to make of it right now, but we'll have to see what happens with that. Overall, guys, not a ton to say with these 2 episodes, because they were definitely very much one-offs. All of them really were one-offs, except for Distant Sun, the one I really did not like. They were basically all one-offs, but I do like that we do seem to be crescendoing to some place within these 3 episodes. I don't know where we're really headed in these last 3, but in general, I am very intrigued to see where we're going to go. But now's the time where I will rate each episode as a whole. So for Season 2, Episode 17, Distant Sun, I would give that episode a 2.5 out of 5, or a C. Like I said, was not a huge fan of this episode. I think it's the weakest episode of the season, unfortunately. But for Season 2, Episode 18, Ace Reporter, I would give that episode a 4 out of 5, or a B+. And for the most recent episode, Alex, I would give that episode, Season 2, Episode 19, Alex, a 4.5 out of 5, or an A-. And with it, I'm now officially caught up to Supergirl. I am very happy to see that. I will definitely be getting my review of the latest episode out this Monday. Definitely look forward to that. Let me know what you guys thought of the episodes. Love to your thoughts on it. Where do you think we're headed in the last 3 episodes of the season? I can't wait to get to the last 2, because I know we're getting both Cat and Superman back. Both highlights of the show. Both have had some fantastic moments, and I can't wait to see what we get out of them. But that's my review. Hope you guys enjoy it. We'll see you guys in my next video, which will also be for a show I need to catch up on, that being Better Call Saul. Definitely look forward to that, and we'll see you guys for that. Okay, bye.